We're going to start on 2,000 atmospheres. And here he is in the Northeast, the underdog, our blue Protoss player. Can he make the dream a reality? Let's find out. He is Hellraiser.
Of course, hailing from Ukraine, once upon a time made a life mission of trying to teach all of us how to properly pronounce Kiev. And I hope I did him proud. Definitely not Kiev, guys. In the bottom left side, we are looking at the main base of that French Terran, one of the top 3 French players according to the Muslim representing Team Liquid. It is Clem. Actually, top 4, excuse me, guys. It was Denver and Drogo duking it out for the title of best player in France. But then he forgot about Marine Lord, so Clem, he's knocking on the door of top 4 France.
You know, just this young up-and-coming French Terran player trying to make a name for himself. Kev, don't forget, give the poor guy a follow. Clem _SC2. All right, he's gonna be big one day. Okay, he's gonna be the pride of French StarCraft. I can feel it in my bones.
Nadipu? I think, I mean, we were joking about Void Race. I think we're gonna see Void Race. Or am I making something up? Or no, actually, okay, what Hellraiser is gonna do, most likely, is going for a very defensive, ultra-quick Phoenix opening, or he's gonna make it look like he's doing something like that at least, but then he will probably still just expand. But Clem is gonna eBay block, so now I'm actually really confused with where Hellraiser is gonna go about it, because his pylon is a bit too far away, a bit, to potentially proxy Void Ray, so I'm actually very confused here. Sometimes these guys have a lot of mind games up their sleeve, and they can obviously confuse their opponent, but sometimes things can get so confusing that they can even start confusing themselves. I'm sure Hellraiser knows what he's doing, though. I have no idea what he's doing.
I think there's a clear... This whole situation just got really, really weird, because, I mean, I totally get it, right? Put the pylon in that spot. It's not closer to Clem's base, really. So he's not going to build a Stargate there. Maybe he would have put tech, but the probe wasn't there. So I think he was hoping that like Clem's SCV would go into the main and see that there was a pylon missing, maybe, and overreact defensively. But he still engine blocked him, so it's not like he can be greedy behind it, even though Clem's building a bunker.
No, that's kind of what happened, though. The SCV did go into the main base and did see double gas, 1 pylon. But now Clem is Clem, so he actually stayed around with his SCV. Now he sees a pylon go up in front of the natural. Now the SCV is going to make it into the main base, and this is not something Hellraiser wanted to see, unless it doesn't see the Stargate, but it does. So Hellraiser made it seem like this is proxy Void Ray. He wanted Clem to panic and go very anti-proxy Void Ray. But now Clem has gotten the perfect scout off. A little bit later, perhaps, than he would have liked to, but he still gets a great scout off. And now Clem is like, all right, I see what's happening. And now I actually think I'm perfectly fine. And it's safe to say, Nate, that he is.
But where exactly do you go from here? Because just building a Void Ray is...
What?
Like he's just building a Void Ray in his main base. You don't have the harassment opportunity from a Phoenix, from multiple Phoenix or Oracles. And I think it can be really risky to move it out, especially since Clem has done this a decent amount. And I think you actually saw this out of him against Kung Fu Bandit too, where he went heavy on the Marines, actually did get a Cyclone with that. You don't have quite this. What the? He's got a second versus Terran?
I mean, I told you in the pre-show, right, that Hellraiser has done some very wild things against Terran players. I casted a game once where he played against Kel Azur, and it was so wild, man. It was like Void Rays into 5 or 6 Oracles and a lot of Zealots with charge, and he just kind of swarmed the Terran because Kel Azur had no idea what was happening. I mean, this kind of stuff, you either look like a genius or it's just not going to work. He even does +1 air weapons before Wargate, so he's going full King Cobra, but this is crazy even for King Cobra.
Against Clem, I mean, this has to be just considering the opponent, you know, like there are certain types of builds that you can be like, okay, this either works or it doesn't, and it all just falls on one part. But he's gonna go into what will kind of be like a weirdish macro game start into the... I mean, Void Rays are not really known for their ability to deal with Marines, Roddy. I feel like that one is pretty comfortably nailed down in the history books. The man with the gun is pretty good against the laser beam in the sky. But maybe he's hoping that Clem is going to underestimate him or accidentally throw a bunch of stuff away. Or he's going to try to run in and snipe Stim right before it finishes. I don't even know if that's possible, but with 2 Cyclones, the Void Rays themselves, actually, he's got a decent amount of zoning control with his early units. And if in case anybody here didn't, needed something to really trip out on, there's those Void Rays right there.
No, I think what Hellraiser is hoping for here is just one of these good old build order wins. Where let's say Clem moves out with 5 or 6 Marines, 1 Cyclone, 1 or 2 tanks, and then a couple of SCVs, and then suddenly you realize that you're fighting not 1 Void Ray and a couple Phoenixes or 1 Oracle, no, but you're fighting multiple Void Rays. Then these Voids can obviously just really go to town. If that doesn't happen, Hellraiser needs to come up with something else, and that's why he's going to send the big boys to the other side of the map now. I think instead of trying to snipe instead of trying to snipe a tech lab, I feel like he kind of needs to snipe the main here. The thing is though, this can only ever work if Clem makes very weird, questionable move outs with tiny armies. If Clem does nothing, he's gonna be totally fine. Like literally totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, what does he get to see to start all of it off? Okay, the Void Rays do turn around and get rid of one of the Cyclones. The pickup with the Medevac to save the other is quite nice. He's playing with the range. The Void Rays do outrange the Marines, so he's kind of baited him into maybe overextending towards that cliff a little bit. The Void Rays themselves are mostly still intact, and he's starting up Flux Veins. He's only lost 1 Void Ray, but he's killed a Cyclone and 11 Marines.
Yep, good start for Hellraiser. The thing is that to make a strategy like this work, you need more than just a good start, because what you said earlier in this game is very true. The Man with Gun, especially as it has combat shield, stim, and +1, is incredibly good against Void Rays. It's not like Hellraiser has 17 cannons at home to potentially buy time. Now, this is maybe where things get very interesting. I think Hellraiser is going to try to kill the Orbital, and then Clem has to make up his mind. Is he going to try to win the... Oh, he flies into a Widowmine. That's very painful. But I think he's going to try to kill the Orbital.
That's like the threat of this type of strategies. He's like, okay, don't attack me. I'm going to have Void Rays and shield batteries, and you won't be able to break me. And then I'll just take these, these great little trades. But Clem, he's the last thing he's going to do is just sit back and let Hellraiser do all of those things that he wants to do. He'd prefer to defend with the minimum number of units necessary. Building the 3rd on location, questionable. However, his 3rd is also going to get taken down on the other side. So here we are, a very weird TVP.
Yep, yeah, but this is not going well for Hellraiser. He's barely winning the fight in the main base of Clem. Clem is now going to stim into the natural of Hellraiser. There is a cannon, there is a battery. Do we have battery overcharge? Maybe we do, but it's a little bit late. All the probes have been pulled, but these Marines alone, that's just enough firepower to win the fight. My goodness. Minus 30 probes, just like that. Battery overcharge was activated, but we fought too far away. What's happening in the main base of Clem, though? I mean, we have Vikings, we have a Widowmine. Clem is totally fine. Hellraiser is just kind of dead.
Yeah, the Void Rays did kill a pretty decent amount of stuff, but he was not there on the defensive side. He catches the Void Rays with the Medevac drop. And of course, we know the Vikings have that decent bit of range, so he can't really try to trade with those without getting very close. But what's really fascinating to me, Kev, he's rebuilding his probes. He's building Void Rays, he's getting +2 air attack. He's not giving up.
You know, if Hellraiser would have had 1 or 2 cannons in his natural a little bit earlier, and then he would have fought with battery overcharge with 2 or 3 defensive Void Rays, then maybe all of this would not have been so bad. It's just that the static D was a tiny bit too late. He does do a good job against the Vikings there, but yeah, we all know that Void Rays, if they get on top of Vikings, are pretty good against Vikings. We also know that they are not very good against Marines. Clem can also just drop, by the way. He doesn't have to run into the natural. He could unload these Marines in the main base, and he would have the time of his life.
I think he just straight up kill everything. The Void Rays are going back across, but what's he going to do? Deny just the 3rd base, and then everything's going to collapse in on him. The Vikings, he's able to shave one of them away. Void Rays are getting a little bit low. And it's great that they're fast, and that's I totally understand. He's doing some pretty cool micro with these, but I love that he puts the Widow Mines underneath where he wants the Vikings to be. Because he's, as you said, Kev, if the Void Rays can shoot the Vikings, yes, they can kill them. But when you have Widow Mines to zone, if there's one thing I think Protoss players can all agree on, it's that Widow Mines are pretty insane, especially versus clumped up air units.
I mean, I gotta say, Clem is actually playing a little bit sloppy, despite the fact that he's still comfortably winning this game, don't get me wrong, because there's just no answer for Marines, and that's a little bit problematic. But he actually made a couple of mistakes, I think, with his Vikings. He exposed them a little bit too much a few times. Clem missed a big opportunity to already get Hellraiser out of here. Even 8 Marines in the main base, I actually believe would have just won the game because there was nothing at home. Instead, Clem brought everything back. Void Rays are going to fly into a Widow Mine here, though. That really hurts. Good job splitting up.
Yeah. Decent little dive flame. But it's like, you know, he's picking up a field goal when he's down 30 points, right? And that's it. GG. Clem. Yeah, I like the Jets. Clem takes game number 1 here against Hellraiser after, well, I can definitely say that I haven't actually ever cast a pro game of SC2 that had that exact scenario take place. So that was pretty cool. That was pretty out there. The double Stargate on 2 bases into Speed Void Rays versus Terran. It's not something that I've actually seen before, Roddy. So that's, you know, it's just another beautiful day in paradise over here at the DreamHack Masters.
Yeah, and even though it was a comfortable victory for Clem in the end, if we had those 2 cannons in the natural a bit earlier, if we had a battery overcharge, and then you have 2 or 3 defensive Void Rays, because Clem's army was not that big, and the Voids in the main base of Clem were somewhat successful, then it could have really been a fun game, but unfortunately, Hellraiser just had nothing at his 3rd base, he had nothing in his natural, and then even just 60 Marines did so much damage. I mean, you can't play Void Rays and lose 30 probes at the same time. To put that into the European equivalent, by the way, guys, field goal, down 30 points. We're trailing 0-4 at halftime, and we score 1-4 in like the 78 minutes. It's not going to make a difference. You got to cater both audiences, Nate. We can't just make NFL references.
That's true. Hey, I can do soccer references too. I can say the word soccer. No worries, Roddy. I'm all over it for you, bud.
I mean, I like an NFL reference. A Hail Mary play is something that I'm a big fan of.
Oh yeah. I feel like it does. I feel like you don't have to actually know too much about it to be able to get that reference either, you know. And what's the soccer equivalent? What do you try to? I don't know. Is there an equivalent play to a Hail Mary in?
Yeah, you bring the goalkeeper.
Football?
You bring the goalkeeper.
Oh, it's like hockey, right? I like that. Empty net, right?
Yeah, pretty much. How are the Falcons doing? Have we won a game yet? We did.
They are unbelievably bad, but thankfully they are not worse than the Giants. So they have 1 win, I think.
I'll take it.
Yeah. They've had a rough year. Don't worry, not as rough as us, but.
I mean, Nate, I have been friends with you since 2012. I don't think the Jets ever had a good year, to be fair.
we had that old guy with the really big beard for 1 year, and we got close, but after that, everything went downhill. So, well, we loaded in. We're here on Oxide, a notorious map for some aggressive play. Maybe we'll have that here in the top right. We have the blue Protoss. He is Hellraiser.
I really hope that I live long enough to actually see you happy about football once and see the Jets win a couple games.
Bro, they haven't made it to the championship since the year my dad was born. So that tells you everything you need to know.
Alrighty. In the bottom left side, we are looking at the main base of the man who does make it to championships very often even. He is the back-to-back champion of the DreamHack Masters Europe. This is Clem.
Now you can see, now it all makes sense why I make those 2-1 predictions in favor of the guy that gets 2-0'd. You know, it's fun to dream. It's fun to believe. Sometimes, anyway.
It really is. And Hellraiser obviously had a cool plan, right? Like, it's kind of like a fake proxy Stargate, not really a Stargate, and then he just tried to get very far ahead economically. Clem fell for it for a split second, because he did open up with 1 base. He even built a bunker on top of his ramp. But then the SCV sneaking into the main base, that kind of ruined the game plan for Hellraiser. If that SCV didn't make it into the main, then it actually becomes a very uncomfortable game to play for Clem, because you're like waiting. It's like, where are the Void Rays? And they never come. And then maybe he would have made one of these small move-outs with only 6 or 7 Marines, and then maybe the Void Rays would have just cleaned that up and then immediately counterattack. So it all could have been so different if it wasn't for the fact that Clem got the scout off that he needs to get off.
Yeah, and you know, if we're trying to like look for positives to take away from that, I did find it interesting. You know, he actually did get Clem to build that bunker early. He did get Clem to keep his units at home. He didn't move out with the Marines and Cyclones. I think there was probably a big window where he could have attacked and gotten something done far earlier, but at the very least, Hellraiser's like overall game plan, he got to do what he wanted to do. He made it to Speed Void Rays. He did actually get a 3rd base built, and somewhat established, but you know, once Clem had his defense set up enough to hold the Void Rays, that's when he just kind of marched across the map and put an end to it. So we have the Stargate in the main base again, kind of at the edge. Natural is being taken, and we'll see where how many Void Rays Hellraiser builds this time.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting because this time Clem did not get the confirmation that there is a Stargate in the main. I do think that Clem is thinking about it, but Clem is a little bit uncomfortable now because he's like, uh-oh, I did actually build CC before Factory. So if this is actually really Void Rays, this is going to be dangerous. That's why immediately he sent out another SCV, and this SCV needs to get a good scout off. If he sees the Nexus, he's already happy with what he scouted. Ideally, you also want to know that you're playing against Phoenixes. That would be very useful, but I don't think he's going to get that confirmation. And now he sees a Robo, and I think at this point, Clem is probably like, all right, mate, what the hell are you actually doing this time?
Yeah, very awkward situation. Don't know if we just a little bit of pickup there. But yeah, it's Phoenix coming out, so he'll be able to at least try to catch anything that heads his way. But what's like the overall game plan? Do you think this turns into, is he gonna go like Phoenix Colossus or something and just try to play a weird off comp rather than doing an all-in type style?
I think that could very well be it, Nate. Don't forget, we still don't have Warp Gate. I don't think that's a mistake. So I really think that Hellraiser has just been truly inspired by King Cobra, a man who loves to skip Warp Gate, even in this matchup. I mean, I'm been a fan of it for a while.
Is there anybody else that ever skips Warp Gate, Kev?
It just gets so weird when you talk about yourself all the time. You know? I'll give love to King Cobra because he put it off at a very high level against Clem. But yeah, I think Hellraiser is going to go full Phoenix, Colossus, and then maybe even Carriers. I guess that's kind of what it's going to be.
All right. You know what? This is fun. As tough of a matchup as it is, you might as well just try the most absolutely out there stuff that you can do. You're going to have some anti-air presence with the Phoenix, a little bit of harass, some unit isolation on anything like tanks if those were in play. And, you know, if the Cyclone moves across the map, you can grab that up, and that would be nice for him. And there we go. There's the Colossus. 2-base Phoenix Colossus. What year is it, Roddy? I love it. It's feels like it's been a while. I have not seen that King Cobra Clem match that you're talking about. So for me, this is I'm having my eyes open.
You know, one of the downsides of the way that Hellraiser is playing is that with this style, you need a lot of gas. So you're forced to take the assimilators in your natural very early. And I've been keeping a close eye on the income tab, not even necessarily the graph, because that's where all the resources are collected. But if you just press I in the interface, you can take a look at the income. And for the last few minutes, Hellraiser's mineral income has been around 14 or 1500. He now finally is saturated, while Clem was at 2000 plus. So yes, you're gonna get powerful heavy gas units out, but your mineral income is honestly quite low. And obviously you need minerals to keep building more bases and cannons and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a downside of this style that Hellraiser is playing, but there's no other way to do it. Otherwise you're just gonna float minerals and have no gas, and you can't build the units that you want to build.
Yeah, I mean, the other downside to a strategy like this, of course, is you're giving up one of probably the coolest things about playing Protoss with that instant reinforcements, the warp-ins. So this pretty much means that if this army does get cleaned up, there is no easy way to rebuild it. So he has to play this incredibly patiently, and as he goes to take this third base, that's going to be the biggest thing we have to keep our eyes on is when is he going to move out? How much will he be willing to move out? And it adds a degree of risk, because if you scan at 6 minutes and 24 seconds and you see the cybernetics core is not really doing anything, the gateway is still a gateway, that should be ringing a couple of alarm bells for you. Yep. There's no reason why the Protoss shouldn't have warp gate by 6:30.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously some people think, like, why wouldn't you just get Warp Gate? It's so cheap. It's honestly because it's useless. When you're playing this style, like, let's say you get Warp Gate, right? So you spend 50 minerals and 50 gas. Then what? Are you gonna wipe in one slow zealot at a time? Like, that doesn't do anything. The only advantage that would be is to wipe in one sentry. But if you really want a sentry, you can also just build it. It's not like the build time takes 7 years. And you want to make sure that A, you get those Phoenixes and Colossus out as quickly as possible, and B, you can start +1 air weapons whenever you want. So it may seem like you should always get Warp Gate, but if you really have no intention of building these Warp Gate units, then getting Warp Gate is actually useless. And yeah, I have actually found it as well, that it's nice to skip it sometimes. Now, Clem is I think playing a dangerous game here, it's a lot about these two Marauders, Nate. Because the Marines, they don't stand a chance against 3 Colossi. So these Marauders and the Cyclones, they really kind of need to stay alive. The Widow Mines are very annoying, but good job by Hellraiser, just sacrificing one of these useless adepts that he had early on. I don't hate what Hellraiser is showing us, but he obviously can't mess up with his army.
Yeah, especially with the amount of Marines and the composition, like you were saying. The Colossi do a lot of damage to light units. They have the splash. So engaging directly into that would be an absolutely terrible idea without getting, a huge spread or having the Marauders up front. And, you have to, there's a lot of micro involved with that. And it's very risky. This observer, by the way, gets to see the reinforcements heading out for Hellraiser. So he knows what's going on. His +1 air is about to finish. He's getting Phoenix range. So he really wants to be able to bully away any Vikings or Medivacs that get too close. Doesn't want to have to risk the Phoenix into possible Widow Mines or the other terrible thing that can kill air units very quickly, the Marines.
Yeah, I gotta say that I don't really like the way that Hellraiser has played it at this point. Now he's starting to get some power too. Because look at the amount of energy on his Phoenixes. It really felt that he assumed Clem was gonna take a bad fight. He's like, I need all my energy, so if he steams forward, I can lift some units, I can lift the Marauders, kill the Marines. But Clem is not taking a silly fight in range of battery overcharge. Instead, Clem is just maintaining his count, and now the Marauder count goes up. We've got 0 Immortals on the ground. Do you know how hard it's going to be for these Colossus to actually stay alive? And let's not forget, they also have no upgrades. They don't even have +1. They don't have +1 armor. I'm afraid that Clem is just going to wipe the floor with the Colossus, and then all that's left are a couple of Phoenixes, and yeah, that's just not where Phoenixes shine.
Without a huge number of Vikings here yet, maybe part of his plan is if he gets dived to try and lift the Marauders with the Phoenix so that they don't have to pull the aggro or get in the way. And he is going into carriers and getting +2 air attack. So once he gets to that point, if he gets a decent amount of that's obviously going to give him a huge amount of firepower. And the Colossi already kind of naturally counter the Marines, so you can see where this is going. It's just a matter of, can he keep up? Can he keep his army in the right spot? Can he keep tabs on Hellraiser's army and on Clem's army? And based on the way that the observers have been just completely uncontested in this game, he has seen everything, and he has one that's over the whole army. He's done a very good job of keeping tabs on that army. He even has another observer in space if there was a big drop.
Yeah, but look at all the Marauders in the center of the map at this point. Look at it. There's like 9 or 10 Marauders coming in as reinforcements, and I just don't think you're gonna kill all the Marines. Don't forget there are some Vikings on the map soon as well. A couple of ghosts potentially land the EMP. Hellraiser really wants to fight right about now, I guess, or maybe he wants to wait for +2, but I honestly don't like where the game is going because he's now down 16 workers. He is going to be down in upgrades. He is super far down economically, and on top of that, his army is actually not reaching like an invincible stage because we don't have Immortals, we don't have great upgrades. We have 1 Disruptor. We're gonna have to put not 5 but 55 on it. That's gonna have to be one hell of a shot, mate.
He's gonna need that big throw downfield. Takes his shot, whips. I guess he's just thinking to himself, if I get enough carriers, if I get enough disruptors, and blow up the ground army, maybe he'll lean too heavily into Marauders because of the Colossi, and then he won't have enough anti-air to deal with the carriers. But that's where this number of Vikings becomes a big play. And I guess he's just hoping the Phoenix will zone those out. But he doesn't have that mobility as this army just shuts down that 4th very quickly. Phoenix will catch a couple of Vikings in the open field, but he might need those back home for this fight. A lot of ghosts too in here, and that's going to be massive with EMPs, especially as it'll be a great way to drain the shield batteries too.
Yep, Clem has a lot of Marauders. For Clem, the key here is just to make sure that the Marauders are in the front line, not the Marines. So once the Colossus get 1 shot off, and that's probably all they're gonna get off, that they shoot at Marauders. And as long as your Marines survive, especially if they have 2 upgrades, and you can land an EMP on the Phoenixes. Here we go, perhaps. Hellraiser feels like it's time to go. 2 Phoenixes coming in from the other side, maybe hoping to draw some Widowmine shots. That ain't happening. Nice micro so far by Clem, as he's just disengaging. I think Clem wants to wait for the 2 upgrades and +1 ship weapons, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, it's definitely a thing worth waiting for. That +3 has only just started on Hellraiser's part. So now the upgrades even out a little bit more because he had that +2 relatively early. And I'm not sure that he has the space control to take care of the Vikings because those carriers, the interceptors are going to get obliterated by the Marines if the Colossi and Disruptors can't destroy them. It's a very, very precarious type of army to control and very expensive for every unit lost, especially these Phoenix.
I actually love how Clem is just disengaging over and over again, not letting the carriers to sit there and unleash all their interceptors, making it very hard for the Phoenixes to put in work. I think Clem is playing a very mature game here. I think he has maybe learned from a couple of games that didn't go his way when he faced a style like this, but he's just kind of choking out his opponent. And Hellraiser is once more going to try to get that fort base up. What I also love is that Clem went for 4 orbitals. You don't need a planetary fortress against a guy with only Phoenixes and 0 Zealot, 0 gateways. I kind of love everything that Clem has been doing in this game. I don't think he's really doing anything wrong.
Yeah, that's a great thing to point out too. Just has all the extra scans for that, and that'll allow him to punish any out of position units a little bit, and grabs one of those carriers.
Whoa! Okay.
Taking some shots on the way back out. The Phoenix grab a couple of the ghosts there too. Lot of damage comes out if the interceptors, as you were saying, if they're all able to deploy, that's huge. But that's why Clem's trying to go for engage, disengage, and the only thing to be cautious about is at some point, Hellraiser is actually going to max out on carriers. He's got 12 of them, and +3 is almost done. So as much as he's trying to control this, we're reaching that point where if Clem makes a couple of slip-ups like that again, that's a lot. He's got a lot of supply, and units aren't necessarily going to do as well straight up against the carriers. You need to have something with those Vikings because they're a little bit fragile, and with this many carriers, if you're not able to one-shot them, if he keeps them clumped up, then things get tough. Really tough. So maybe as he continues to take all these bases, you add a little bit more to the production so you can replenish your stuff if the carriers wipe one of the armies out. I don't know. This is a very stressful position to be in for both players now.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks a lot better for Hellraiser at this point than it did a little while ago. If Clem makes one mistake with his Vikings like that, where he just attack moves, I mean, you mentioned all the supply that Clem still has. It's not going to be good against carriers. This game is obviously not about the Colossus anymore. It's not about Immortals or even about the Disruptors. It's all about the carriers. And Clem may have a monstrous economy, but if these carriers make it into his main base, Hellraiser could actually still win this game.
Yeah, and now the interceptors are starting to engage onto the Vikings. He can chase them down with that extended range. He's getting very close to the natural expansion. EMP is going to hit the Colossi, but the Vikings are being routed, and even if they kite away from the interceptors, they're still giving up ground behind it. The natural expansion is getting obliterated here, and Clem, he's down 50 supply. The production is about to be contested. He's not going to be able to build any more Vikings. The carriers have breached the main base, Rotterdam.
Yep, I mean, once or twice, the Vikings were on an attack move, and if they are on an attack move, they just don't deal any damage, because Vikings and auto-attacking interceptors is one of the worst things in the world. And Clem made all these Marauders, which I think is smart, because you want a couple of Marauders to take care of the Colossus, and then you obviously have the Marines in the back, or the Gulls, or the Vikings, and they can take care of the rest. But Clem just kind of kept the 9, 10, 11 Marauders for a very long time. He was going up to 5 starports. But every single time that is like he almost gets a carrier, he lost a couple Vikings in return. And at one point, Hellraiser's like, I think I like my army right now. And he gets all the interceptors out, melted 7 or 8 Vikings immediately. I mean, these are the kind of games why people hate Protoss. Because Clem did a lot of things right. But I think eventually you have to understand that, yeah, it's obviously not about the Marauders anymore. It's not even so much about a couple of Marines. It's just about taking care of the carriers. But he never quite got there. I mean, well done by Hellraiser, even though that's a very, very strange game.
Yes, strange, very strange game is, I think, the best way that we could possibly describe that as we go to Romanticide for the next map. And oh my goodness, yeah, that's it's like a trap game, right? You think to yourself, okay, you have the advantage, you just got to play your regular style. Okay, opponent's doing something kind of weird. All right, I'm going to expand a lot, I'm going to gain a lot of economy. And then at some point, Hellraiser just says, I've actually got a pretty absurd number of carriers. The fact that I've been able to reach this point is really nice, because where does Clem's strength comes from, right? He outmaneuvers people, his mechanics are fantastic, and he's hitting you from like 3 or 4 different directions at once. But with that many Phoenix at the start, it's kind of hard to try and drop, right? And the Colossi with the shield batteries, Marines, he was never going to be able to just shove in unless he had built way more Marauders in the earlier phase. So that's a painful way to lose a game, I'll say, Kev.
Yep, a frustrating one for Clem. I almost feel, because he was so far ahead economically, that if instead of going Vikings, he would have just kept going Marauder Marine and non-stop upgrades, I really think he would have just been able to overrun his opponent, because Hellraiser was simply just a bit too broke. He had 0 upgrades. The Marauders, they can run forward, they can kill the Colossus immediately, and then the Marines will just do their thing. But Hellraiser was able to force a game-deciding fight right before the ultimate transition took place between Bio and Vikings. And that was good enough to tie things up. Quite shocking. But here we are in Game 3. In the bottom right side, we are looking at the main base of the man who absolutely hates Protoss by the look of his face. He is representing Team Liquid. It is Clem.
And his opponent in the Northwest, the man who needeth no warp gate. In blue, he is Hellraiser. Hellraiser stock's been doing great recently, Kev. I mean, that's a huge pickup for him. I think he just got into another game too, a little movie crossover. And well, Clem, you gotta be careful when you play with the cube, because you're gonna summon some dark stuff out of another dimension, and that is exactly what happened in Game 2. Does he, like, what do you do? How do you start to approach this now? Does he get too paranoid going into this one? Does he decide maybe I'll do the same thing and then let Hellraiser kind of build up that army? This is such a good defensive map for a variety of reasons that you have to go into this being like, I can't let him do that again if you're Clem.
I wonder what Hellraiser is going to do. I think this time he proxies the Stargate, but he will still play a macro game. I do want to compliment Hellraiser on the way that he's been playing this best of 3, where it comes to keeping Clem on edge, keeping him sort of in the dark, even though the first game it kind of backfired because the SCV did see the Stargate rather quickly. But this is so annoying because he's making Clem worry about the potential of proxy Stargate Void Ray all the time, and whether it's actually happening or not, then it doesn't even really matter. He's doing a good job in, I think, making Clem feel very paranoid. For Clem, it's of course important to stay calm, but I can imagine that he is a little annoyed after that previous game, because it felt like his game. He was pretty far ahead in almost every regard. He had in upgrades, he had in army supply, he had in income, he had in bases. He was doing well. It just, I mean, carriers are brutal, man. Like, they don't really need a lot, Nate. They need one little decent start of an engagement. If all those interceptors are on top of, honestly, whatever army, it's hard to run away from them.
Yeah, I tell you, man, that's I like battle cruisers against carriers for a lot of those reasons, but that's obviously not an easy transition for people to make. And generally, if you get the ghosts, right, you get the EMPs, Marines blow up the interceptors really quickly. It's not really supposed to be that tough, but I have no doubt in my mind that that's exactly what we're going to see again here, because once more, no warp gate. He has the Stargate. As you said, he hit it. It's not really like a proxy. It's a, I want you to think I might be proxying you, so it's back home. And Clem is not going to sit back quite as much as he has before. He's moving some Marines out. He wants to see what's going on.
I mean, Clem may be realizing that Hellraiser does cut some corners, and Phoenixes immediately are not the greatest defensive units. Like, that Zealot is kind of useless here, so it's really all about the Adept. The moment that Clem kills the... this can actually get a bit gnarly for Hellraiser. He's got 2 Phoenixes that could help out a little bit here, but this is funny. This is not a move out that you ever really expect. He obviously knows that his opponent likes to skip Warp Gate, so Nate, I don't think obviously he's gonna die, but if Clem just gets a couple of probes here, it's already a phenomenal start. And that is exactly what he's doing. He wants to get one more. Can he get that final one? I mean, he might get the Adept, though. He is going to get the Adept.
Wow.
Disastrous start for Hellraiser.
Phoenix out of energy. Yeah. Well, if you think about it, like you just said, he doesn't have Warp Gate. He can't just drag his mouse and bring a couple Zealots or extra Adepts in or anything else. He has to wait that painfully long 30 seconds to build a Stalker before he can actually do anything else to try and shut this down. And I think this is a really smart thing to do by Clem, because you've taken the wind out of the sails of this build. No matter which way it goes, he's going to be missing that money over the next few minutes. And I think something that we will have already had at one point or another in the previous games. Yeah, that's going to be a huge thing for him to grab. But just to quickly finish, he didn't get a Robo Bay, no second Stargate. Those probes that have already been lost are already kind of impacting it. He hasn't actually progressed in his build yet. Just now the Robo goes down.
Yeah, I mean, we do have that Void Ray, so I think it's a tiny bit risky what Clem is doing here, but if he can just unpower the Stargate, I guess it's okay, and he will unpower it. He is going to end up losing all these units, though, and he would love to kill one Phoenix, but that's just not going to happen unless Hellraiser really messes up. I don't know if that was the greatest trade by Clem. I mean, yeah, you delay additional Stargate units for a little bit, but you did throw away a Cyclone, you threw away some extra Marines. Because now it's a 5-minute game and Clem has lost 14 Marines. Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever needed an example, if you ever wanted to see one of the top players under a little bit of stress and pressure, I think this has got to be the best example that we've had in a long time. I mean, even though Clem, we don't know how this game is going to end, but even though Clem lost the last game, I think he's feeling more of that pressure now, and he keeps wanting to move out. And if Hellraiser can kind of piecemeal pick it apart and keep getting these kinds of grabs, then that's a very scary thing if you're a Terran player.
I'm very confused because Hellraiser sent out another probe. It felt like he wants to repower his Stargate, but then he changed his mind. He's getting Warp Gate now. So Hellraiser is probably going to try to switch it up completely. The problem is when you open up like this, you can just switch it up completely. And without a Colossus, he's actually going to have some trouble dealing with these, I don't know, 14 Marines or whatever it is that Clem is sending to the other side of the map. Hellraiser's army at this point sucks. He is going to lose his Nexus. The moment the Colossus is out, he's going to do a bit better, but what a funny game. What a funny best of 3 between these two, man.
Yes, funny is a very good word to use to describe this one, because it has definitely been strange and unusual in almost every imaginable way. But like you said, he's been bringing the pressure, and there's the shield battery trying to save the Void Ray. That's not going to be enough. Big Daddy Colossus does come out. That will buy him some time, and with the Phoenix, he wants to get the Medivacs, but the Colossus is not close enough to keep the Marines at bay.
I mean, it's kind of funny because, like, you can say in a weird way it's genius what Hellraiser is doing. He's going to force out Vikings and he's going to force out Clem to play the same way as he did before. The problem is Vikings are also good against Colossus, and now it's just going to take so long before he has either Blink or Charge or maybe Storm or Disrupt his way down the line. Then I'm afraid Clem is going to run away with this one. You look at the army supply at this point, it's 53 army supply against only 30 on the side of Hellraiser. And if it's not for that Colossus and the Immortal, yeah, away from batteries, I don't think that Hellraiser's army really stands a chance.
No, it's very, very fortunate for Clem that he made the adjustment to be a little bit more aggressive here, because he's thrown some units away, but he's done so much economic damage for a build that relies on such expensive units. He just wants to go straight into the main with this big drop. Very dangerous, but he recognizes, okay, the Stargate is clearly not being used anymore. There's not enough Phoenix that he has to be worried about going for drops, and that's the biggest impact of shutting that down. And perhaps he regrets not having it in his main. 2 Widowmines are going to burn inside the natural mineral line. He's building a cannon, but he's not moving his probes, and that actually could have been a lot worse. But workers killed is still a lot.
Absolutely, it's decent by Clem, but if he would have just switched that one Widowmine to one of the probes on the left, because of the cannons, all the probes were very clumped up. That could have been a -12 shot or something, but Clem is still taking out all his anger and frustration of the carriers here on Hellraiser in Game 3. Poor Hellraiser is rebuilding a Twilight Council because he thought he was going to lose the previous Twilight Councils, and now he's got 2 of them. I mean, I guess he can also fire up Blink before Charge is quite done, but this game ain't pretty for our Ukrainian Protoss.
No, especially since he's been forced back into something more normal. With the Phoenix mostly gone, he doesn't have any... Okay, well, not with the Phoenix completely gone. He doesn't have anything that can keep the Vikings away. And as you said, there's no Blink. So GG Clem is going to take it 2-1. But boy, oh boy.